Patricia, it's so wonderful to get to see you again and to just really have a conversation about your chapter in the book. It's called Journeys Through Lifetimes. It's for the Imaginist, fairy tales, fables, and folklore. And your chapter really kind of has me intrigued. Journeys Through Lifetimes, a gorgeous image that you use to represent it. And your quote from W.B. Yeats was, "The world is full of magic things, patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper." Tell us about this story and how this your star in the story, your protagonist, came to be.
Yes. Well, I hadn't really written fiction since I was a kid, but I always had this feeling of my past, not my immediate past, but the past of generations. And so as a child, I had an imagination that was pretty rampant. And this just built on that. I felt that where I am today is the sum of where everybody went before. And there was a lot of traveling in my family from country to country and settling in new places. And so when I started the story, I started thinking about how kind of scary but fascinating it would be at the same time, especially for someone who had an imagination and a sense of adventure and that always wanted to see new things, that would be in their lifetime. And the Grace in the book, she has a spirit guide, for lack of another word. Some people call it an angel, some call it a spirit guide. She just came to me and her name was Kalpana. And she was always with Grace through all of her journeys, through even different names. She wasn't always Grace, but to Kalpana, she's always Grace. And through it all, the presence of her there gave her a sense of peace when she was at the most turmoil and allowed her to seek her imagination and to go forward and see what adventures would bring. And she was raised by storytellers, and she thought it was going to be her journey to be the keeper of those stories and also to see all the places that she heard about in them and places that she had never even dreamed of seeing.
How beautiful. It sounds like just something that kind of covers the breadth of time. There's so much there's so much depth into that.
Yes, and it was hard to put it into a chapter, which was kind of exciting for me because I have a lot more than a chapter. But I tell you, it kind of came from a personal experience. Also, the first time I went to Europe in my 20s, I remember being in Westminster Abbey. Well, just being in Europe was a dream, because I'd always read my dad's books and my grandparents had traveled, and it was like deep within me that was something I really wanted to do. It was a goal. But I just remember there's this one moment when in Westminster Abbey, I put my hand on a pew of it within the Abbey there, and it was almost like an electric shock. It was not scary. It was comforting, but it was like jolting. It was like I knew people that had touched that before, and that I knew I was going to find more things as I traveled. And I can't explain it. It like probably sounds like I should be committed for that, but that's really what I felt when I was there. And there's been certain places that I've been fortunate enough to travel to that I have that feeling, not in all of them, but there's a feeling to where it's like home. And so it's always been kind of exciting to explore it and see what that is. And this story allowed me to take some of those personal feelings and make it into something that maybe explains how I felt that way and how it came to feel that way for me. And, that other people might be sensing the same thing within their own lives, not necessarily on a far journey, but just circumstances and places that they visit or people they meet.
Yes. And at that time when you put your hand on the pew, did it feel like you had been there before?
Yes. It was, how like if you have static electricity, and it was literally almost like that. there was a jolt, a sense of knowing. And I had never, obviously, like I said, been to Europe before or anything. And when I had that sensation, I wasn't afraid. I felt at home, but I felt like there was also people that were either had been there, or maybe their spirits were still there, or there was something that I wanted to know more about it. And I just felt like I had been there before, not in this lifetime, obviously, but at sometime, and that it was important to me.
So as far as your own personal wisdom of the things that you know now in this life, what kind of personal wisdom did you imbue into Grace?
The sense that you always have to let yourself be afraid sometimes and unsure, because I think that I can remember back in high school, everybody knew exactly where they were going and what they wanted to do at that time. And I had a sense I wanted to travel, and I wanted to write, and I wanted to be an attorney. So, but it was just kind of a weird sensation on that. And so for me, I always felt like there's something that I was missing because I wasn't on a straight path. And then, I think as we get older and you realize, like I realized, that the path's not always a straight road. And really, sometimes the detours are the most fun part. Some of them are sad, some of them are funny, some of them are frightening, but they all add to your story. And I think that was the main thing for it. And I wanted that to be present in the character in the chapter.
Beautiful. So did she have a superpower, something that was very unique to herself?
Well, her superpower to me was the ability to retain the stories. And I don't think of that, like when I think of superpowers, I think of Marvel and DC Comics and things, magic spells and potions and stuff. That would be really cool, because I know a few people I could throw some on. But it was a thing that she realized, that she had a great gift. She had her family, and it wasn't perfect all the time, but she had stories to tell. And it was really important because those stories carried on. And as she traveled through, even beyond this chapter, she went through changes in the world to where her stories became part of someone else's story, and someone else's story became part of hers, because she appreciated the stories. I can remember even when I was a kid, my parents would always say I never met a person that I didn't know. Because I always loved to hear people's background and their stories, and where some of the kids rolled their eyes when their parents started on, and I was always fascinated. And but I think her superpower was in realizing that if you have a cherished story, if you have experiences, and there's wisdom that comes from it, whether you succeed or you fail. But her superpower was in believing that there was always more, but not more in a want kind of a thing, more of a exploration type of thing. It was, so she didn't feel needy or wanting for things. She wanted to experience more of life.
More curiosity than anything.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow, how exciting. So totally kind of getting a little bit off of the subject, but still dealing with you writing your chapter. I work with a lot of authors that takes them years sometimes to get that book together, get it actually done. So I know you've done a lot of writing. How do you set the atmosphere for yourself, make the setting when you sit down to write?
I found that I've learned things from other people as far as being consistent, but I have to say that if I'm going to bring out my own personal flaw, sometimes consistency isn't always there. But what it is that when I do think of, sometimes it's a phrase or a circumstance, or it can be a mood, even like something like a road that I see driving, or a sunset. If I write down what I'm feeling at that moment, then sometimes I gather all those things together and it'll become clear to me something to do with it. It doesn't always go with the same story, but I feel like I lost things along the way sometimes by not doing that. And now that I do it, it's kind of great because when you're searching for a feeling or a circumstance or even setting a scene, I kind of have some things to draw off of.
That's beautiful. So do you typically, like when you sit down to write, actually really put that book together, or that chapter in this case? Do you tend to meditate first? Do you have to light candles? You play music? What's kind of does it have to be real quiet? Or does it need to be noisy?
I found that I could be in the middle of a crowd. For example, we were on a transatlantic cruise earlier this year, and in the middle of all the hustle and bustle out by a pool deck, and I sat at a table, and at first I was distracted, and then I just let it go, and I was able to do it there. I don't have a routine practice as far as candles or anything. I usually try to set a direction, and whether that's through what someone might call meditation or just discipline. I try to set a direction for what I want to do. But the main thing I tried to do, and I've learned to do in the last few years, is not be disappointed because my direction changes.
Yes.
Because I used to beat myself up more than I already do. And I think we all beat ourselves up a bit. But the thing is that I found that if I allow myself to just have starts and stops and maybe even gaps, don't worry about filling in all the gap right then. Jump to my next thought. And maybe that's just because that's kind of the way I am. I see people that are very disciplined and they're able to sit and, just write for long periods of time. I usually don't write for more than about an hour. I think the most I've ever written at once is 2 hours. And I do well either early in the morning or really late at night.
Well, so that's kind of your routine, either early in the morning, late at night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you hope? This book is very unusual. I know you've participated in the other books in this series.
Mm-hmm.
This book is, more about using the imagination. And yet each of the stories I have seen kind of just kind of related to life experiences of the actual the writer. So when somebody picks up this book, which is not like business people writing a chapter for a book, it's more, I think, in a lot of ways, more for fun and more for to spark that imagination. What do you hope that people walk away with when they've read this book in particular, but maybe even more so your chapter?
I would hope, pretty much like any book, when people pick it up, that it allows them an escape. The world's kind of crazy right now, and the world's always been a little crazy, but it's kind of crazy right now. People have really busy lives. And so I would love to think that whether it's my chapter or someone else's chapter, because there's so many talented people that have contributed to this, I'm in awe. But I would hope that it allowed them some moments of, whether it's funny to someone or it's inspiring or it's just an escape. I hope it gives them some peace and enjoyment. I think that's mainly because books, they can stimulate you in different ways, and it doesn't always have to be intellectual. It doesn't always have to be, something that you learn a specific subject. I think if it allows people to go inside themselves and get lost in the chapter and get lost in the whole book, and it gives them some type of peace and comfort or pleasure or laugh, or makes them just be able to escape for a while, that's what I would hope for.
Beautiful. Well, such a sweet interview, and I thank you for taking the time to do this. And this book is just weeks away from being published.
I know.
So it's pretty exciting. So I know on lunch day we'll have another interview, a group interviews actually. So just enjoy the moments of all of this and just be, relish in it.
I
And
am, and I'm so excited, and I really have to thank both you and Sharon for your guidance, and you guys bring great things to the world as people, and then with your skill sets and stuff, it's even better, and I appreciate you.
thank you. Thank you. Well, take good care of yourself and enjoyed our interview.
All right, thank you. Me too.
Thank you.